Kira's heart raced as she moved through the dimly lit corridors of the abandoned space station, her breath echoing off the cold metal walls. Shadows danced around her, cast by the flickering lights that struggled to stay alive. She had heard the stories, whispers of the legendary humans who had once roamed the galaxy like shooting stars, their bravery unmatched. But as the leader of a resistance group made up of various oppressed alien races, she had learned to be cautious. Legends were often built on shattered dreams. Today's mission was simple: gather intelligence on the Xylar Dominion's latest activities. The Xylars had tightened their grip across the galaxy, and Kira was determined to pull back the curtain on their latest scheme. As she crept past a series of closed doors, her pulse quickened with every step. Then a sudden clang echoed through the station. Kira froze, her instincts kicking in. The Xylars were notorious for patrolling such abandoned outposts, ensuring that no one could disrupt their control. She pressed herself against a wall, scanning for any signs of movement. Her hand instinctively brushed against the hilt of her plasma dagger, its familiar weight a small comfort in this terrifying place. Just as she began to think she was imagining things, the door in front of her slid open with a hiss. Kira stifled a gasp as she caught a glimpse of a group of Xylar soldiers entering, their sharp features and glowing eyes a chilling sight. They were discussing something in their guttural language, pointing at a console that lit up with a menacing red light. She had to move, and fast. Kira crouched low, her mind racing. Should she engage or retreat? The resistance was counting on her. But just as she turned to slip away, a sudden, blinding light filled the corridor, illuminating everything in a searing white. The ground trembled beneath her as alarms blared, and Kira's instincts kicked in. She dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the surge of energy that erupted from the console. The Xylars stumbled, their shouts turning to panic as the station began to shake violently. In the chaos, Kira spotted a small doorway labeled cryopods. A desperate instinct propelled her forward, and she ducked inside just as a wave of energy surged past her, shaking the station to its core. Inside, the pod chambers were dark, but she could make out the silhouettes of figures suspended within glass capsules. What are these? Her mind raced. Could they be the fabled humans? Suddenly, the alarms intensified, and the Xylar soldiers regrouped outside the cryo chamber. Kira pressed herself against the wall, feeling the cold metal against her back as she strained to hear their muffled conversation. "We must stabilize the core," one of them shouted. "If we lose control, the whole station." Before he could finish, another explosion rocked the station, causing the lights to flicker erratically. Kira's heart raced. She knew she had to act quickly. Without thinking, she rushed to the nearest pod and began examining the controls. The glass casing shimmered ominously, sealed tight. With a surge of adrenaline, she initiated the emergency release. The glass hissed and cracked, slowly retracting. Inside lay a human, a soldier, with a rugged face and tousled hair. He blinked in confusion as the cool air rushed around him, eyes darting as he registered his surroundings. "Whoa!" He started, but before he could finish, the alarm blared louder than ever, and Kira motioned urgently for him to follow. The Xylars were on their way. With one human awakened, could more follow? She had no idea how many were in the pods, or how to wake them, but there was no time to ponder. "Come on," Kira shouted, grabbing the soldier's arm. "We need to get out of here." With every ounce of determination, she pulled him into the chaos, ready to face whatever horrors awaited outside. The galaxy had been waiting too long for heroes. Today, perhaps, they would finally awaken. Adrian Kane blinked rapidly, the harsh lights of the corridor flooding his senses as he struggled to process his surroundings. The last thing he remembered was the hum of the cryo pod and the comforting darkness that had enveloped him for what felt like an eternity. Now, adrenaline surged through him as he was thrust into a world filled with chaos and danger. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, still groggy from his awakening. The voice of the woman beside him was urgent, tinged with an intensity that jolted him fully awake. "Kira," she replied, her grip firm on his arm. "We need to move. The Xylars are coming." He had heard stories about the Xylar Dominion before he entered cryo sleep, stories that painted them as merciless conquerors with a penchant for brutality. The urgency in Kira's eyes made it clear that the tales didn't do them justice. Without a moment to lose, Adrian let instinct take over. "Lead the way," he said, shaking off the disorientation. Kira darted down the corridor, Adrian close behind her. The station trembled with distant explosions, and the alarms wailed like banshees in the night. The two raced through the maze of hallways, Adrian's military training kicking in. He scanned their surroundings for threats while taking in the warm metallic structures around them. He could see signs of battle, a scorch mark here, a dented wall there. This place had seen its share of conflict. Suddenly, a blast of energy erupted from behind them, and the wall adjacent to them exploded into a shower of debris. Kira instinctively threw herself against a nearby panel, and Adrian did the same, adrenaline pushing him to act before thought. "Stay low," Kira shouted, her voice piercing through the cacophony. Adrian nodded, adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared to counter any potential attackers. His mind raced with tactical strategies, but there was no time for plans. They needed an exit. As they pressed on, Kira led them through a narrow maintenance passageway, its walls stained with years of neglect. Adrian could hear the distant shouts of the Xylar soldiers behind them, their voices growing closer. "Do you have any weapons?" Adrian asked, his voice low but urgent. Kira glanced back at him, determination blazing in her eyes. "Not yet, but we can find some. We just need to reach the hangar." The pair moved swiftly, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. Adrian's thoughts flickered to the stories he'd heard in his youth about the humans, the fierce warriors who had once defended the galaxy. He felt a surge of pride and purpose wash over him. This was his chance to reclaim that legacy, to prove that humans were still a force to be reckoned with. As they neared the hangar, Kira paused, placing a hand on Adrian's chest to stop him. She pointed ahead, where a group of Xylar soldiers was stationed, blocking their path. Their sleek, armoured figures bristled with weapons, and the sight of them sent a chill down Adrian's spine. "We can't go through them," Kira whispered, her expression fierce yet resolute. "But if we can find another way." Before she could finish, a loud crash resonated behind them. The wall buckled under the pressure of another Xylar blast, sending clouds of dust swirling through the air. In that moment, something inside Adrian ignited. "Follow my lead," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. He motioned for Kira to cover him, then sprinted toward the group of Xylars, his instincts guiding him. "Hey, over here," Adrian shouted, drawing their attention. As the soldiers turned, he ducked low, rolling beneath their weapons and finding cover behind a crate. Kira followed suit, using the element of surprise to her advantage. With a quick, fluid motion, she pulled out her plasma dagger and charged at the nearest soldier. Adrian grinned, his blood racing. "This is how we fight," he called, joining her as they took on the stunned Xylars. The fight was fierce and chaotic. Adrian felt the thrill of battle pulse through him as he and Kira worked in tandem, combining her agility with his strength. In that moment, he understood that they were not just two fighters in a desperate situation. They were the beginning of something greater, a spark of rebellion that could ignite the galaxy. With the SLRs dispatched, they stood, breathing heavily. Kira's eyes gleamed with a mix of exhilaration and determination. We need to get to the hangar and find a ship. We can't stop now. Adrian nodded, feeling a newfound sense of purpose. Let's move. The galaxy needs us. Together, they pressed on, united in their quest to awaken the legends of old and bring hope to a galaxy shrouded in darkness. As the dust settled around them, Adrian felt a surge of triumph wash over him. The cheers of the resistance fighters echoed in his ears, a powerful reminder that they were no longer alone in this fight. They had faced the Sylar head-on and emerged victorious. Kira scanned the area, her eyes alight with determination. We need to gather any supplies we can find and assess the damage. This victory is just the beginning, but it won't mean anything if we can't sustain ourselves. Right, Adrian replied, nodding. Let's divide our forces. Some can secure the perimeter, while others search for any supplies or weapons we can use. As they split off to coordinate the efforts, Adrian felt the weight of the moment settle on him. This was their first significant victory against the HFY, and it was crucial to capitalize on it. He made his way to a nearby supply crate, prying it open to reveal a trove of equipment, rations, medical supplies, and weapons. Hey, over here. He called to a group of fighters who were approaching. We've got some gear. Help me haul this out. As they began to distribute the supplies, Adrian caught sight of Kira in the distance, surrounded by a few fighters. She was talking animatedly, her hands gesturing as she outlined plans for their next move. He admired her leadership. She had transformed from a desperate rebel into a beacon of hope for her people. Adrian. Kira's voice broke through his thoughts. She motioned for him to join her, a spark of excitement in her eyes. I've just been speaking with some of the others. We're planning to set up a more permanent base here on Hesperia. This place has resources we can use, and the locals are eager to join our cause. That's fantastic, Adrian replied, his enthusiasm matching hers. With more people on our side, we can increase our chances against the Tylars. But we need to fortify our defenses. They won't take this loss lightly. Exactly, Kira said, her expression turning serious. We need to ensure that our base is protected. The Sylar will retaliate, and we need to be ready. As they continued to gather supplies and strategize, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling of urgency that hung in the air. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Hours passed as they worked, building makeshift barricades and gathering intel from the captured Sylar equipment. Finally, as the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the camp, they convened to discuss their next steps. All right, everyone. Kira called, standing atop a crate to address the assembled fighters. Today, we achieved something incredible. We struck a blow against the Tylar and reclaimed resources that are rightfully ours. But we cannot stop here. We must prepare for their retaliation. Adrian stood beside her, feeling a swell of pride. We've proven that we can stand against them. We can rally more support if we reach out to other factions. Hesperia is our foothold, but we need to connect with the wider resistance network across the galaxy. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. An alien fighter named Tarek, a massive being with 4 arms, stepped forward. If we can secure more allies, we can launch coordinated strikes against the Tylar strongholds. They need to know that they cannot intimidate us. Kira nodded, her gaze resolute. That's the plan. We'll send out scouts and messengers to neighboring systems. We need to spread the word about our victory here. As the discussion continued, a sense of camaraderie formed among the fighters, each one contributing ideas and strategies. They were no longer disparate groups. They were becoming a unified front, united by a common goal. Then, just as the meeting began to wind down, the peaceful atmosphere was shattered by the distant rumble of engines. Adrian's heart sank as he recognized the unmistakable sound of Sylar ships approaching. "Everyone, to your positions." Kira commanded, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "We need to prepare for an attack." Adrian sprinted toward the Osprey, adrenaline surging. He hopped into the cockpit, quickly assessing the ship's systems. "We need to get ready to defend ourselves," he shouted over his shoulder to Kira. She climbed into the cockpit beside him, her expression fierce. "I'll coordinate the ground defenses. We have to hold them off until we can regroup." As Adrian fired up the engines, he could see the dark silhouettes of Sylar ships descending through the clouds, their ominous shapes contrasting starkly with the vibrant landscape of Hesperia. The reality of their situation set in. This was the moment they had prepared for. "Get ready," Adrian warned, his heart pounding. The Sylar ships opened fire, and explosions erupted around the encampment. Adrian felt the vibrations of the blasts through the cockpit, a harsh reminder of the stakes at play. "We need to return fire," Kira shouted, her eyes alight with determination. "On it." Adrian responded, gripping the controls as he maneuvered the Osprey into position. With the sound of weapons firing and the urgency of battle enveloping them, Adrian and Kira prepared to defend their hard-won ground, knowing that this fight would define their place in the galaxy. The war was here, and they were ready to face it head-on. The Osprey soared through the inky depths of space, leaving the chaos of that Sylar station behind. Adrian and Kira sat in the cockpit, the control panels glowing with data and star maps. Outside, distant stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across velvet. "We need to figure out our next move," Kira said, her brow furrowed with concentration as she plotted a course. "That Sylar will be hunting us, and we can't stay in one place for too long." Adrian nodded, his mind racing. "What about Hesperia? I've heard rumours that it's a hot spot for resistance movements. If we can make contact with the local factions, we might find more allies." Kira's eyes sparkled with a mix of hope and determination. "It's a risk, but it might be our best shot. If we can rally support there, we can take the fight to the Sylar." With a firm grip on the controls, Kira plotted a course for Hesperia, the planet slowly coming into view. The lush greens and blues of its surface contrasted sharply with the desolate expanses of space, offering a beacon of hope in an otherwise dark galaxy. As they descended through the atmosphere, Adrian's heart raced with anticipation. The vibrant colours of Hesperia were mesmerizing, and he could almost feel the pulse of life below them. But the stark reality of their situation loomed large. They had no idea what awaited them. Upon landing in a secluded clearing, Kira and Adrian exited the ship, scanning their surroundings. Tall trees stretched toward the sky, their leaves whispering secrets to one another in the gentle breeze. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of damp earth, a stark contrast to the sterile confines of their previous environment. "Stay alert," Kira cautioned, her voice low. "We don't know who's watching." They ventured deeper into the forest, each step a reminder of the stakes at hand. After a short trek, they stumbled upon a small encampment, where a handful of ragtag resistance fighters were gathered. The atmosphere was charged with an undercurrent of urgency and determination. As they approached, a tall, broad-shouldered alien with piercing eyes stepped forward. "Who are you?" he demanded, his tone both challenging and curious. "I'm Kira, leader of the resistance on the Outer Rim," she replied, her voice steady. "This is Adrian. We've just escaped that Sylar dominion, and are here to unite our forces against them. The alien narrowed his eyes, assessing them. You think you can just waltz in here and command our loyalty? The Xylars have hunted us for years. Why should we trust you? Adrian stepped forward, feeling the weight of their mission. Because we're here to fight back. We've already faced the Xylar and survived. Together, we can turn the tide, but we need your help. We need to form a united front. The alien's gaze softened slightly, a flicker of interest igniting. What do you propose? Kira exchanged glances with Adrian, then took a deep breath. We need to raid a nearby Xylar supply depot. It's heavily guarded, but if we coordinate our forces, we can strike hard and fast. We can show the galaxy that Xylar are not invincible. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered fighters, and the tall alien regarded them with a newfound respect. Very well. I'll gather our best. But know this. If you fail, it will not only cost you your lives, but also those of everyone who joins you. Adrian felt a surge of determination. We won't fail. This is just the beginning. The group quickly organized, strategizing and preparing for the raid. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the camp, Adrian felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. This was more than a battle for survival. It was a fight for freedom, and he was ready to lead. In the dead of night, they moved stealthily through the dense forest, each fighter skilled and determined. Adrian and Kira led the charge, navigating the shadows toward the Xylar depot. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, and he could feel the fear and hope mingling among the fighters. As they approached the depot, the guards patrolled the perimeter, their movements precise and calculated. Adrian's heart raced as they took their positions, Kira beside him, her eyes fierce and focused. On my signal, she whispered. Adrian nodded, adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared for the imminent clash. The moment felt monumental. This was their chance to strike a blow against tyranny, to ignite the spark of rebellion across the galaxy. 3, 2, 1, now. With Kira's command, chaos erupted as the resistance fighters charged, weapons drawn and hearts full of resolve. Adrian felt the rush of battle as they launched their attack, determined to carve a path to freedom against the shadows of oppression. The cockpit of the Osprey hummed with energy as Adrian and Kira prepared for the imminent assault. Outside, the Xylar ships descended like dark harbingers, their silhouettes stark against the glowing sunset. The air crackled with anticipation, tension mingling with the acrid smell of smoke from the earlier battle. Adrian, we need to get those cannons online, Kira shouted, her fingers flying over the control panel. I'll target their lead ship. We can take it down before they reach the camp. Got it, Adrian replied, adrenaline surging through him. He adjusted the targeting system, locking onto the lead Xylar ship as it began to descend. I'm ready when you are. With a fierce determination in her eyes, Kira activated the ship's weapons. The Osprey trembled as the cannons whirred to life, ready to unleash their payload. Now, she commanded. Adrian pressed the firing button, and a volley of energy bolts shot out from the Osprey, arcing through the air and striking the lead Xylar ship. The impact caused a brilliant explosion, lighting up the sky. The ship spiraled, trailing smoke as it plummeted toward the ground. Yes, one down, Adrian exclaimed, exhilaration coursing through him. But their victory was short-lived. The remaining Xylar ships returned fire, energy blasts streaking toward the Osprey. Adrian yanked the controls, executing a sharp turn just in time to avoid a direct hit. The ship rattled under the force of near misses, and Kira gripped the console. eyes wide with urgency. "We need to reposition," Kira shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Let's get behind that ridge for cover." On it, Adrian maneuvered the Osprey toward a nearby ridge, using it as a shield. The ship shuddered with each incoming blast, and he felt the pressure mount. The fighters on the ground were counting on them, and he couldn't afford to fail. As they ducked behind the ridge, Adrian quickly scanned the cockpit's readouts. "Shields are holding for now, but we need to deal with those ships before they can hit the camp. What's the plan?" Kira's brow furrowed in thought. "We can use the ridge to our advantage. If we can flank them from above, we can catch them off guard. We'll hit them hard and fast." "All right, let's do it," Adrian replied, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He throttled the engines and climbed above the ridge, peeking over to assess the Sylar formation. The remaining ships had spread out, making them harbour targets. "I see 2 ships clustered together. If we can take them out, it'll create chaos among the rest." Kira nodded, determination etched on her face. "I'll aim for the one on the left. You focus on the right." Adrian adjusted their trajectory, aligning the Osprey for their assault. "Ready on your mark. 3, 2, 1. Fire." Kira shouted, her voice fierce and commanding. Adrian unleashed another volley, the cannons roaring as energy bolts tore through the sky. Kira targeted her ship, landing a precise hit that sent it spiraling out of control. "Yes, that's how we do it." Adrian cheered, but his victory was short-lived as the remaining Sylar vessels began to turn their weapons toward the Osprey. "Adrian, we need to move," Kira shouted. "They're focusing on us now." He yanked the controls, diving the Osprey into a sharp roll to evade incoming fire. The ship shuddered under the strain, and Adrian could feel the tension in Kira's posture as they navigated the chaos. "Get ready to engage the backup systems," Kira instructed. "If we take any more hits, we'll lose our shields." "Already on it," Adrian replied, fingers dancing over the controls to activate the auxiliary systems. The ship's systems hummed with renewed energy, but the strain was palpable. Just then, a call crackled through the comms from the ground. It was Tarek, his voice urgent. "Kira, Adrian, we're taking heavy fire down here. We need you to draw their attention while we regroup." "Hang tight, Tarek. We're on it," Kira replied, her focus unwavering. "Adrian, let's create a diversion. We'll lure them away from the camp." Adrian nodded, resolve settling in. "I'll lead the charge. You cover me from the rear." With a deep breath, he gunned the engines, the Osprey shooting forward toward the remaining Sylar ships. As they turned to face him, he swerved left, then right, zigzagging to avoid their blasts. "Keep firing, Kira," he yelled over the roar of the engines. Kira unleashed another barrage, targeting the closest Sylar ship. Energy bolts ripped through the sky, striking true. The ship shuddered, then exploded in a brilliant flash, sending debris scattering. "Nice shot," Adrian cheered, feeling adrenaline surge through him. But they weren't out of danger yet. The remaining ships were closing in, and the camp was still under threat. Adrian had to think fast. "Kira, can we deploy any countermeasures?" "Good idea. I'll set it up," Kira replied, her fingers flying over the controls. As they continued their evasive maneuvers, Adrian felt the weight of leadership settle on him. They were fighting not just for their survival, but for a cause that could unite the galaxy. "Let's show them what we're made of," Adrian shouted, determination etched on his face as they prepared for their next move. Together, they would turn the tide of battle, no matter the odds. The Osprey danced through the air, a blur of defiance against the backdrop of chaos. Adrian and Kira worked in perfect synchrony, their focus razor-sharp as they evaded incoming fire and executed tactical maneuvers. Each explosion around them fueled their resolve, and Adrian felt the weight of the moment. This was a fight for their future. Countermeasures deployed. Kira called, her voice steady amid the chaos. "Let's see if this buys us some time." Adrian glanced back at the trail of flares and electronic jammers they had released. The XLR ships momentarily hesitated, confused by the sudden disruption in their targeting systems. "Now's our chance. Let's flank them," he urged. He turned the Osprey sharply, veering toward a cluster of Sylar ships that were struggling to realign their weapons. Kira readied the cannons, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "Get ready to fire on my mark." As they closed in, Adrian felt the tension in the cockpit. The Osprey's engines roared beneath him, a living creature propelling them forward. "I'm in position. Just give me the word. 3, 2, 1 now," Kira shouted, her voice ringing with authority. With a flick of a switch, Adrian unleashed a torrent of energy bolts, the cannons blazing to life. The bolts tore through the air, striking 2 ships with pinpoint accuracy. The first ship erupted in a brilliant explosion, while the second veered wildly, its systems failing. "Yes, keep it up," Adrian whooped, exhilaration coursing through him. But their victory was short-lived. A remaining Sylar ship, larger and more heavily armed than the others, turned its focus on them. It was an imposing figure, bristling with weaponry, and it began to lock onto the Osprey. "Kira, we've got company," Adrian warned, gripping the controls tighter. "Deploy evasive maneuvers," Kira commanded, her eyes narrowing at the incoming threat. "We need to shake that ship off our tail." Adrian jerked the controls, spiraling the Osprey into a steep dive and then a sharp climb. The ship shuddered under the strain, and he felt the pressure build in his chest as he fought to maintain control. That Sylar ship fired, the energy blast rocketing past them, and narrowly missing the Osprey's wing. That was too close. Adrian exclaimed, his heart racing. "We need to take it out before it gets a clean shot." Kira nodded, her focus unwavering. "If we can get beneath it, we can hit it from below. It won't expect that." "Let's do it," Adrian replied, determination setting his jaw. He maneuvered the Osprey into a steep descent, angling toward the underside of the Sylar ship. As they approached, Kira adjusted the targeting system, her fingers flying over the controls. "Locking on? Now." "Fire," Adrian commanded, unleashing another barrage of energy bolts. The shots struck true, slamming into the Sylar ship's underbelly. It trembled under the impact, smoke trailing from its engines. "Yes, it's weakening," Kira cheered. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Sylar ship returned fire, a concentrated beam of energy slicing through the air. Adrian's instincts kicked in as he veered to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly blast. "Adrian, watch out," Kira shouted, her voice laced with urgency. "We need to focus on evasion." "I'm on it," he replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he pushed the Osprey to its limits. They executed a series of sharp turns and rolls, using every maneuver in the book to stay out of the Sylar ship's line of fire. Finally, as they broke free from the immediate danger, Adrian glanced at the comms. "Tarek, what's your status down there?" he asked, hoping for good news. "We've managed to regroup, but the XLR are relentless," Tarek replied, his voice crackling through the static. "We need air support. The camp is taking heavy damage. Hang tight, we're coming. Kira replied, her eyes flashing with determination. Adrian, we have to go back and protect the ground forces. Kira insisted. They need us more than ever. With a fierce nod, Adrian set the course back toward the camp. Let's give them hell. As they soared back toward the battlefield, the sight of the camp filled Adrian with resolve. Explosions rocked the ground, and he could see the resistance fighters fighting valiantly against overwhelming odds. Let's clear a path for them. Kira shouted, readying the cannons. Adrian gripped the controls, his heart pounding. We'll take out the remaining Xylar ships. We can do this. They dove back into the fray, unleashing their firepower with newfound vigor. Each shot rang true, taking down ship after ship. The tide of battle began to shift, and Adrian could see the resistance fighters rallying around the Osprey, their spirits reignited. Together. Kira shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. We can turn this around. With a fierce determination, Adrian and Kira led the charge, their combined efforts lighting the way for the resistance fighters to push back against their oppressors. They were not just surviving, they were thriving, and the galaxy would soon know their names. Together, they would forge a future free from tyranny. The air around the camp crackled with energy as Adrian and Kira soared above the battlefield in the Osprey. The ground beneath them was a chaotic tapestry of dust, smoke, and fierce combat, but the tide was shifting. Resistance fighters rallied, bolstered by the sight of their airborne support. Adrian, look. Kira pointed as a cluster of Xylar ships regrouped, clearly intending to overwhelm the camp with renewed fury. We need to take them out before they can coordinate their attack. On it. Adrian replied, his focus laser-sharp. He swung the Osprey into a dive, readying the cannons as he lined up their targets. Let's show them what we're made of. As they descended, Adrian felt the familiar thrill of adrenaline course through him. He fired the first volley, and energy bolts streaked toward the closest Xylar ship, striking it squarely and sending it spiraling into the ground. Yes, that's one less to worry about. Kira cheered, quickly adjusting the targeting system for the next ship. Adrian grinned, feeding their momentum build. Keep it coming. They unleashed another barrage, cutting through the ranks of Xylar ships as they soared back up into the sky. The resistance fighters below, witnessing the aerial assault, rallied with renewed vigor. Adrian could see them pushing forward, taking advantage of the chaos they were creating. But as he glanced at the status display, his heart sank. Kira, we need to watch our fuel levels. We can't risk running dry in the middle of this. I see it, she replied, her expression serious. Let's make our shots count. We need to be precise if we're going to turn the tide. Adrian nodded, adjusting their trajectory. He focused intently, lining up another shot. I'll aim for the lead ship. If we take out their commander, it might disrupt their coordination. Kira's fingers danced over the controls, readying the targeting system. Locking on. Now. Fire. Adrian commanded, unleashing a powerful volley. The energy bolts shot out, striking the lead ship directly. For a moment, it seemed to shudder in the air, before erupting into a brilliant explosion that illuminated the battlefield. Cheers erupted from the ground as resistance fighters saw their enemy's leadership crumble. Keep pushing forward. Kira shouted, her excitement contagious. But just as victory seemed within reach, a familiar rumble echoed in the distance. Adrian's heart sank as he spotted more Xylar reinforcements arriving, their ships emerging from the shadows of the nearby mountains. We've got company, more incoming. We have to hold them off. Kira exclaimed, her tone urgent. "If they reach the camp, it's over." Adrian clenched his jaw, determination flooding his veins. "Then we fight. We can't let them take this ground." They soared toward the new threat, weapons primed and ready. As they engaged the incoming ships, the air erupted with the sounds of battle, the roar of engines, the crackle of energy blasts, and the cries of fighters determined to reclaim their home. Adrian maneuvered the Osprey with skill, darting and weaving as they pushed back against the relentless waves of Sylar ships. Adrian's mind raced. They needed a plan, a decisive strike to break the enemy's will. "Kira, if we can lure them into a tighter formation, we can hit them with a full barrage." The battlefield roared with chaos. But amidst the cacophony, Adrian and Kira soared in the Osprey, their hearts racing as they pressed the attack against the remaining Sylar ships. The tide had shifted, and the resistance fighters below surged forward, emboldened by the aerial support. "Adrian, look!" Kira shouted, her eyes fixed on a formation of Sylar ships trying to regroup. In that moment, he knew that as long as they fought together, nothing could extinguish the flame of freedom. The galaxy had awakened, and they would be its champions. "Great idea," she replied, her enthusiasm palpable. "Let's draw them in." Adrian executed a series of maneuvers, pulling back to entice the Sylar ships. As they pursued, he turned sharply, leading them into a tight formation. "Now, Kira, give it everything we've got." Kira activated their remaining firepower, and the Osprey unleashed a torrent of energy. Bolts of light shot through the air, striking multiple Sylar ships in a single devastating assault. The explosion lit up the battlefield, and Adrian could see the shock ripple through the enemy ranks. "We're making a difference. Keep pushing," he shouted, his voice rising above the din. As the Sylar forces began to falter, Adrian and Kira pressed their advantage. They soared through the chaos, engaging the remaining ships with relentless fury. The camp was holding, but they couldn't stop until every last Sylar ship was down. "We're almost there," Kira shouted, her face illuminated by the glow of the battle. "Let's finish this." With a final surge of energy, Adrian steered the Osprey into the heart of the fray. Together, they would turn the tide once and for all, determined to reclaim their galaxy from the grip of tyranny. The final stand had begun.